Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing We Give Thanks.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Susie Farrell, and I use she, her pronouns. Here at First Unitarian, our mission is through spiritual connection in community. We listen deeply to others and ourselves, open to wonder and transformation, and serve together with love and humility. We acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door and part of the Haudenosaunee people on whose ancestral lands First Unitarian now stands. If you're new or newish here, please stop in at the welcome desk so we can help you connect. And if you're here today because you're going through a hard time or worried about someone else, please connect with a pastoral care associate during or after our service. If you're a regular around here, you might be surprised to see me because you are expecting our lead minister, Reverend Shari. They're sick today, but fortunately, church is always the work of many hands and voices, and so today I'm joined with Jenna Cohen, our worship associate, and a special guest preacher, Reverend Eileen Casey Campbell. As we settle into this sacred time and place, take a deep breath. I invite you to light a chalice wherever you are. Here in the sanctuary, Jenna will light ours. Please join me in our unison words on the screen. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and mysteries of this great gift.
And let's rise one more time in body or spirit as we come together to sing How Could Anyone? Anyone fail to know
I'm Jenna Cohen, and I use she and her pronouns. And early this morning, when I was thinking about what I wanted to say for opening words, I remembered a time that I was helping to plan the worship service for a young adult con at my home church in Binghamton. And I had volunteered for several things, maybe one too many, and I was excited to be back with all of my friends in my home church because it had been a little while. I had just graduated from college, and I had gone on this incredible, life-altering voyage to Germany. And so I had a very clear message about what I wanted our worship service to be and to look like, and what I wanted to say to my fellow young people. And so my friends came to me and they said, Jenna, how can we help you put together this vision of yours? And I was like, thank you so much, but, I got this. Like, I know what I'm doing. I can make this happen. And so as the time went on, we got all the moving parts together. People collected what they wanted to read and collected what they wanted to sing, but I still had not finished my sermon. And so time kept pushing forward, and in young adult and youth culture, we do worship at midnight, which gets harder in your 20s, even though it's not that much different from your teens. And people were getting a little antsy and ready to get our worship on so we could probably go to sleep. And so I was still writing away, and my friends came to me again, and they said, how can we help? What do you need? And I was like, well, I'm almost done. I'm almost there. I got this. Thank you, for your offer, but I don't need any help. And so finally, I rushed together all the things I needed. I had finished what I wanted to write. People had sang their songs, and they did their readings, and I had gotten up to the podium ready to deliver this message, only to realize as I shuffled through my papers that not all of them were printed. And so I stood there, frozen, and my friend Ben comes up to me, puts his hands on my shoulder, and he said, how can I help you? And I told him what had happened, and without skipping a beat, he runs off to the minister's office and goes to print off all the pages that I need. And I'm feeling real uncomfy for the probably only 5 minutes that it took to accomplish this task. But my friend Kaz gets up, and she goes to sit at the piano and starts playing music. And whatever kitschy pop song that she chose, everyone knew the words to. And they sang and filled the silence with laughter and smiles and music. And isn't that why we come to church? To share with each other, to not just give in service to others, but also to allow others to come and aid you. Perhaps even to be a little humbled, but to practice vulnerability in the safety and care of a community that loves you. Thanks. Oh, and I did this last service too, almost forgot. Turn and greet your neighbor and share with them a time that you reluctantly accepted help. Thanks. I remembered sooner this time.
Good morning. I am, as you surely noticed by now, not the Reverend Shari Halliday-Quan, but I am glad to be here, although I wish Reverend Shari was feeling better. And it is time for a story. And if you have ever met me, you'll know I'm going to ask you to help tell our story. And today's story comes from the Taoist tradition, from Taoist folklore. And so I need just two helpers. You don't have to say anything, and you don't have to know what you're doing. If that helps. I need a helper who's feeling strong, stable, sturdy, strong, tall, and proud to come right here and help. Yes. Okay, we have one. Yes, stand in strength. I need a helper who's feeling flexible, soft, yielding, bendy, smooth, and flowing. You all gonna make Pablo do it again? Oh, we got someone, Pablo. You get to sit this one out. He did volunteer last time. We had, shockingly, in a UU congregation twice, the flexible one is the harder to find. Okay, we'll get there. This story begins in a forest. So it was a pine forest, and we have here our pine tree. It was an old pine forest, and the culture among these pine trees for many generations of pine trees, which are long generations, if you know, was to grow as straight and tall and strong as possible. They pointed toward the sky, they stood upright, they rooted deep, and they were strong and unyielding. They taught their little young pine trees as they grew up from saplings, grow strong, little pine trees. Do not bend. Stand in your power, firm where you are, strong and tall, straight and proud. And that's what the pine trees did. And on the edge of the pine forest, alongside a little stream, was a willow tree. And now this willow tree, she wasn't raised in the culture of the pine trees. And what she liked to do was sway in the wind. Rather than stand straight and tall, strong and unyielding, she liked to feel her branches move back and forth, let the breeze blow her from side to side, dip down and touch the stream beside her, and then spring back up. Yes! Way to commit. And so, in this story, it so happened a storm was coming. And whispers spread throughout the forest of the blizzard that was coming this night. A snowstorm approached, and flakes began to fall, and the pine trees said to one another, "Remember who you are. Stand firm. Be tall. Stand strong. Do not yield to the storm, and we will see our way through." And the willow, she didn't listen to the whisperings of the pines. She swayed in the wind. She just enjoyed being blown back and forth as those winter winds blew through the forest. And the snow started to fall, and it landed on the branches of the pines, and it was heavy. It was so heavy, it started to weigh them down, and the pine trees said to one another, "Do not give in to the weight of the snow. Hold firm, be steady, stay strong." And they did just that. And the willow tree, the snow started landing on her branches, and then she dipped them down to the earth. The snow slid off. She sprang back up again, and each time the snow weighed down her branches, slid off into the stream, and she sprung back to life. Meanwhile, the pine tree on the edge of the forest felt the weight of the snow heavier and heavier and heavier. He tried to stay strong like he had been told all his life, but it became too much. He couldn't hold the weight of all that snow. His branches started to snap and fall, and then he fell down to the forest floor. Nice. And the willow in the morning found she was as springy and flexible and full of life as ever. And this is the end of our story. Thank you for your help. Thank you.
Please join me in a moment of shared silence. Grounding in our bodies, finding our breath. Our meditation today is from Reverend Gretchen Haley. Give up the fight for some other moment, some other life than here and now. Give up the longing for some other world, the wishing for other choices to make, other songs to sing, other bodies, other ages, other countries, other stakes. Purge the past, forgive the future, for each come too soon. Surrender only to this life, this day, this hour, not because it does not constantly break your heart, but because it also beckons with beauty, startles with delight, if only we keep waking up. This is the gift we have been given. These body clothes, this heartbreak, this pulse, this breath, this light, these friends, this hope. Here we remember ourselves, all, a part of it all. We enter now into ritual to bring what is in our hearts and lay it on the altar of community and spirit. Honoring the complexities of life, bring to mind whatever grief, growth, or gratitude is alive in you. Online, you're invited to share in the chat. And here in the sanctuary, you are invited forward to light a candle. If you would like an usher to bring a candle to you, please raise your hand. May we now share in this ritual of community care and witness to one another's hearts. All that we hold in our hearts for ourselves, for each other, and for the world is held in this community and by a love that will not let us go. Amen.
Our musical meditation today is filled with loving kindness. I'd like to offer my voice first and then invite you to join in the second time. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May I be filled. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. One more time. May we be whole. May we be whole.
I'm going to speak for a minute while Pablo does his magic trick where he vanishes from here and shows up upstairs. Everything our church does for ourselves is made possible by what we bring to it. Each week we practiced shared generosity to support the work and witness of Unitarian Universalism in Rochester, and half of our Sunday offering goes to a partner organization working to create a more just and loving world. Today, we share our plate with Planned Parenthood in their program Control for Community Health. Planned Parenthood offers a range of health services, including reproductive care, cancer screenings, and educational programs aimed at promoting wellness and informed health choices. Their mission focuses on providing accessible and affordable care to communities, emphasizing the importance of preventative health, and supporting individuals making informed decisions about their health and futures. In the spirit of abundance and generosity, our offering will now be received with gratitude.
My kids do Taekwondo, which is a Korean martial art in the same family of martial arts as karate, kung fu, aikido, judo, and actually Tai Chi as well. And last year, I went with my older child to a Taekwondo tournament and was able to watch him spar against opponents in a non-practice setting for the first time ever. He said I could tell you this story because, and I quote, I won. And he did. He won first place medal in his sparring category of level and size, but the way that he won was what I found so surprising. I have never done any kind of martial art or any type of fighting thing, or if we're being super honest, much of any type of sports things in general. And I thought that it would be pretty aggressive. But that is not this kid's jam. Like, he's got just endless energy, not an ounce of it is violent. He wasn't even a toddler who did normal toddler things like hair pulling and toy snatching. I've just never seen him strike out with aggression at another person. So I went in being all, it's about learning and having fun, and I'll be so proud of you doing your best no matter what happens, like all the classic mom stuff. And then I watched this kid absolutely destroy his opponents by being whatever the opposite of relaxed is. Soft, I guess we're calling it this season. Relaxed, yielding, non-aggressive. Rather than brace against his opponent's hits and kicks, he moved with them, refusing to absorb their energy. A punch came for his shoulder, and he just turned his shoulder with the force of it, meeting it like seaweed meeting a wave. A kick came toward his head, and his head bowed, not ducking out of the way, but carrying the force of the kick with it so that his opponent fell over. That's a point deduction, falling over, which I found out as it happened because I'm about as bad at being a sports mom as I am at being a sports participant. My kid just danced like this, softly moving along with, not against, all the blows his opponents brought to him until they fell over or tired themselves out, hardly striking out at all in return. It looked nothing like the fight match I was expecting, and yet there he was at the end of it, unharmed and being handed a little gold medal. And all he had to say about his style of sparring was, they tell you to relax into the hit, and it really does work. And like we've already covered me not being a great sports mom, but my first thought after a moment of parental pride was, oh, this'll preach, I think. So, of course, I had to dive deep into the theory of Taekwondo technique. And it turns out that one of its core principles is called, in English, relaxed strike, where high-level practitioners are taught to relax all of their muscles between each strike that they make for the purpose of conserving energy and shifting their center of gravity slightly to make themselves harder to knock over. Using those relaxed muscles to move with an opponent's strike is taught to negate the impact of those strikes. And at this point, you're like, where is Reverend Shari, and how did I accidentally sign up for a martial arts lecture on Sunday morning? So know that it is actually a religious strategy. It's likely that this tactic of yielding in order to win comes to Taekwondo through a long line of philosophical inheritance across the Yellow Sea and inland to the Henan province of China and the beginnings of Taoism. Allow me to read you an excerpt on the principle of Wu Wei, or very roughly, not forcing or non-doing, from a commentary on the Tao Te Ching by Alan Watts. He writes this: thus Wu Wei, as not forcing, is what we mean by going with the grain, rolling with the punch, swimming with the current, trimming the sails to the wind, taking the tide at its flood, and stooping to conquer. It is perhaps best exemplified in the martial arts, where an opponent is defeated by the force of his own attack. And the martial arts reach such heights of skill that I have seen an attacker thrown to the floor without even being touched. The principle is illustrated by the parable of the pine and the willow in heavy snow, which we told this morning. The pine branch, being rigid, cracks under its own weight, but the willow branch yields to the weight of the snow, and the snow drops off. Note that the willow is not limp but springy. Wu Wei is thus the lifestyle of one who follows the Tao and must be understood primarily as a form of intelligence. That is, of knowing the principles, structures, and trends of human and natural affairs so well that one uses the least amount of energy in dealing with them. This intelligence is, as we have seen, not simply intellectual. It is also the unconscious intelligence of the whole organism, in particular, the innate wisdom of the nervous system. Lao Tzu wrote in the Tao Te Ching about this principle of yielding, of staying soft and rooted in that universal oneness of everything. And he said that our connection to that oneness, to the wholeness that is available to those who notice it, is lost when we oppose in strength, as if we are separate, rather than yielding in love, as if we are part of the same source. Paddling without an awareness of the currents is a struggle, but floating along with their energy in connection to our surroundings is peace. Taoism makes its way into our religious inheritance through France and then across the Atlantic to New England by way of the transcendentalists of the early 19th century, namely the Unitarian-affiliated Henry David Thoreau, who was a member of a Unitarian church, although purportedly didn't attend much. We know that Thoreau owned French commentaries on Taoism, even though an English translation of the Tao Te Ching didn't exist until a few decades beyond his time. And noticing the themes of his work, I think we can pretty safely assume that Thoreau read those commentaries we know that he owned. In fact, they seem to have been fairly influential in his thought around civil disobedience. This principle of Wu Wei shows up in his thought around the ethics of disobedience without violence, where the justice-seeking person is like seaweed swaying in the river as it flows past. They refuse to be dragged along in the current, planted firmly, even while yielding. If they stayed rigid, forceful against the nature of the water, they would break. But by bending, by giving into the energy of the water like seaweed, they not only survive, but stay rooted in their place. We see this principle of yielding in order to win show up in our modern justice movements, inherited by way of Thoreau to Martin Luther King Jr. King wrote about Thoreau's civil disobedience when he was a young adult in undergraduate school, saying, "I became convinced that non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as cooperation with good." No other person has been more eloquent and passionate in getting this idea across than Henry David Thoreau. As a result of his writings and his personal witness, we are the heirs of the legacy of creative protest. Now, by the time he made it through seminary, Dr. King had the conviction of this Taoist principle as understood by Thoreau, and he had the faith of the possibility of a world described by Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And in case it's been a minute, let's hear a little bit of that Sermon on the Mount, yeah? It starts like this. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And actually, it goes on for the rest of the chapter and also the next two. You can find us in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7 if you want to open up your Bibles and follow along. I'm just kidding. You all had like a panicked look for a second. I know what kind of church I'm in. You can find us in chapters 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew if you want to open up your phone and Google it if you get bored or once you get home. In the next few chapters, Jesus preaches on the intentions of our hearts being as important as the actions we take. He condemns adultery. He rejects the eye for an eye code of Hammurabi, suggests we turn the other cheek to our enemies, give to the needy, but don't do it ostentatiously. It's like all his greatest hits. So Dr. King has these chapters from his upbringing in the social gospel movement as the world we dream of, and of this kingdom of heaven on earth, right? Along with the clear understanding that our social structures of oppression and domination mean it is very much not the world we have. And an inkling, since young adulthood, that Thoreau was onto something with the civil disobedience stuff. But Thoreau's third-hand translation is not quite cutting it. King sees the dream, the potential, but he can't quite make out the path to get there. He has the ethic of love, but he doesn't have the methodology. Enter Bayard Rustin. You all know Bayard Rustin? Yes, at least one hand went up. He was, in case you're not familiar, a gay civil rights leader whose queerness, specifically his arrests for it in the public record, kept him behind the scenes in the movement. That is the reason why you know his work, but you may not know his name. In 1955, Alabama, no one was making him their poster boy. He was nevertheless extremely influential to the civil rights movement in its direction. He had gone to India in 1948, just after India gained its independence from colonization, to train in Gandhian resistance methods. And when he went to the aid of the movement in Birmingham in the 1950s, he brought his understanding of those techniques to Dr. King. And suddenly, Dr. King's theology had a methodology to be applied in the real world. It suddenly felt possible to hold whole societal structures, not just individual churchgoers, to the ethics of the Sermon on the Mount. Now, here is where we drop the question of Taoist inheritance. Hinduism and South African activism, from which Gandhi derived his methods, are older than Taoism, and historians can't trace a lineage of thought from one to the other in either direction. But as Gandhi said when he was asked about their clear similarities, two people can drink from the same pond even if they have discovered it independently of each other. So King and the whole movement, at Rustin's urging, adopted the Gandhian method of nonviolent resistance. The strategy was to resist injustice not by force or by inflexible power, but by activists placing themselves in the line of oppressors' inflexible power and bending with each blow. Simply sitting on buses or at lunch counters, marching peacefully in the streets, consumer inaction, that wu-wei of non-doing, in the form of boycott. Resisting authoritarian power for this movement, and so many who have followed in its wake, did not mean seizing authoritarian power for their own sake, for power on its own terms. It meant waking up to practice a radically different kind of power. Dr. King's goal was never to see Bull Connor languish in a jail cell, but to realize their oneness, to see his heart redeemed by love. It is the power of force overtaken by a power of a radically different kind. It is a strategy that wins by yielding, by giving up the struggle for hard and inflexible power, by giving up the oppressor's lie that we exist alone outside of one another. It compels in its very passivity the wielders of oppressive power and their bystanders to recognize themselves as interrelated with those whom they oppress, as part of one river flowing. Nonviolent resistance works when resistors put themselves in the path of power, stay soft, and importantly, are observed. It's crucial that this yielding to win is public. It mattered that Bloody Sunday in Selma was televised, and that it was, at that time, the most violent thing Americans had ever seen on a screen. That was the win, the winning of so many hearts to the movement because they observed and were moved. That's the stumble and fall of the opponent on the mat, tumbling under the force of their own unresisted blow. This is a strategy that requires the softness of bystanders, requires the breakable hearts of observers who hold the power of majority to be moved. And let me say this to my fellow white folks out here. As white anti-racists, or as people who have inherited institutional power, who steward institutions built on the foundations of white supremacy, there is another component, another spiritual component to this principle of yielding for us. It needs to include the inner work of cultivating a softness of self, a malleability of spirit that allows us to be receptive to the undoing of what racism has created in us, that allows us to be reshaped by justice. Rigidity, black and white thinking is a pillar of white supremacy. It's an ideology that raises us to be like the pine tree, refusing to bend. And we need to let that go to access the wisdom of the willow, of the multiplicity of life, of the softness that allows for change, within ourselves and within the institutions that we serve. The waters of white supremacy we have been grown in would have us hold certainty as one of our greatest values, would have us defend what we're sure we know and are right about above all else. Those rushing waters have taught us that power is a finite resource we have to hoard or lose. It has taught us to hold firm against anything that challenges what we're sure we know and whatever little power we think we've earned. Softness is the antidote to that hard certainty of white supremacy we have inherited. To be part of the movement for liberation, we need to cultivate a receptivity to correction and trust that bending with the flow of change will not destroy us. We have been raised in this sea of racism to believe that discomfort is tantamount to danger, that if we shift and sway uncomfortably, if we let our hearts soften to another's pain, we have lost. Friends, it is the only way to win. Yielding our hearts to that larger love that will not let us go, that hurts us to our core when we see another in distress. Our seeing and being moved is required for this tactic to work. We cannot look away. We can't look away from the genocide in Palestine, from the famine in Sudan, from the ongoing oppression of our black and brown siblings here in Rochester, right here in our denomination. The work is to see the tide of injustice sweep across the bodies of our siblings, of our world, and to allow our hearts to be redeemed by their own breaking. May we be so moved, and amen.
Please rise and body your spirit one more time as we join together to sing When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. When our heart is in a holy place, when
our chalice extinguishing words as Jenna extinguishes the flame. We extinguish this flame. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water. Yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. The soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the rigid.